ready? I think we are
Yep.
live now.
Oh, hello, Internet. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's a different time now. But good evening or good morning, whatever you guys are. Let me just.
It feels like it's a more optimistic time now as well. You know, with all a lot of vaccine rollout and all that kind of side of things, and slight normality. It feels like we're in a much better place.
Yeah, I hope everyone is a lot happier now. Yeah. So I think we're just going to introduce tonight. We have Phil Hunt from Studio KA. It's crazy. It's one of my favorite studios, Phil. It was one of the reasons I moved to London as well. That long time ago. So we're going to play the show real first, and then we just catch up and we start talking about everything. Give me 1 second. It's been so long. I just need to see how to do that.
Forgotten how to internet.
Share screen. And we need share sound optimized for video. I think I'm better than last times. Can you guys see the?
Yeah, you're good.
It is working.
Play.
Very nice.
Life flashes before your eyes.
I wish it was slightly longer so I could have finished social media posting.
That's great. It's really funny to see some of the work. I do have some of the DVDs. We were talking about DVD before. I had some of the DVDs from you guys.
Which ones?
I have the JoJo from Mark. That is a really old one.
Classic.
I need to have a look in the studio. I have the Lost and Found as well.
Another classic.
Actually, really weird coincidence. When I was I live in like a really small town, but when I was kind of going through some shops yesterday, I actually saw a DVD of Lost and Found, and I thought, oh, that's kind of like divine intervention, isn't it?
Wow, because I don't see them anymore. I mean, you asked me just before we came on the call, have I got any DVDs? And there are 2 boxes down here full of my sort of animation collection. Whenever I used to go to places like Annecy, I was always that one that was going and coming back with piles of DVDs. And I must confess, half of them I've still not watched, but obscure, animations and things like that. But I don't actually possess a DVD player in the vicinity here.
The problem.
There's no slots.
It's all streaming.
Yeah. I need to sort of rip it all and put it all online. But who's got time for that at the moment? So my descendants will do it. So.
Actually, I was going to ask later on, but I guess now we're talking about DVDs and stuff. It kind of makes sense. But like, are you guys starting like streaming stuff as well, like all your old films, putting them on whatever, like Amazon or what have you?
Well, we've got I hope we've still got A Morning Stroll, Grant's film, Mark's Varmints and Mark's JoJo on Vimeo, I think, which is I'm pretty sure they're still there. I should check. I should check the statement to see if anyone's bought them in the last 5 years. But then, films like Lost and Found, well, that's more complicated because there are other people involved. And and then more recently, Here We Are. I mean, that's, you can only watch that on Apple TV. So we don't possess DVD of that or anything. So, and that's the problem with a lot of stuff that we do as a studio. The commercial stuff is that you're bound up with all the kind of entanglement of contracts and rights and everything that go with it. So you can show certain things and other things you can't. We've had clients before where their businesses or business messages changed, and so they wanted us to take down an ad which they were behind some years previously, and that's really awkward, because you sort of think, well, it's kind of work. So we've had to, and you'll notice sometimes in the montage there are a few bits and pieces you think, hang on, what's that? I don't recognize that job. Where's the project page? And it's because it's from a piece we can't show.
That's like the 2 seconds that you can, and then that.
Yeah, or we can't play the audio, or we can't play anything which indicates what it is. We did a job a few years back for a company somewhere for something, and it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It sort of, at the time, it represented probably the best bit of 3D, best bit of 3D technically, and aesthetically and creatively. We'd built upon everything that we'd done up to that point. It was a really great showcase. And for whatever reason, the client decided, no, that's not the message they wanted. So under no circumstances can we ever show it on pain of death.
Frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, you can occasionally in a live forum, if I'm doing a talk or something like that, I can show clips of it without sound or something. But no, you've got to be really careful, because also I found that if I'm doing talks, you go to Pictoplasm or a festival or whatever, and half the audience are filming it anyway. So I like being candid. I like saying as much as I can sometimes, and especially when talking to students, you kind of need to explain what was explained to you about how this industry can operate sometimes.
That's a rite of passage in a way.
Yeah, and it's we with all of our interns, when we have them, when the studio's open, we try and park them in meetings with clients as soon as possible, so they can see, oh right. But most of the time it's fantastic, and we were lucky enough, we work with really good, clever, creative clients. But occasionally there's really interesting people come through the door with really interesting attitudes to working with you and telling you what to do, so we say, and so you kind of need to talk about that, to students. But otherwise, it's too much of a shock thing. But you have to be very, very careful now, because I wouldn't want anything I said uploaded and coming back to haunt me, so to speak. So yeah, but as I said, we generally, I mean, we've been really fortunate. I mean, I count myself personally to be the most fortunate person I've ever met in the industry, because of what I get to do every day, and this brilliant group of people I've worked with, I work with and have worked with over the years. People who've come and grown up with us as a studio, people who've come and gone and come back again, people who've come and gone and stayed gone. But it's I count myself really fortunate, and I've always reminded myself that I do stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say. I think I try to surround myself with people way more talented than me, and you cannot go wrong in that case, because you're always slightly kind of, if I walk over there to where Steve sits or Mark sits the other side, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking, because you take something over to show them and you go, never mind. So
like there's a well-trodden path in like a U shape, we go, oh no.
Yeah, no.
And Phil, as you talk about like showing like things in the studio to the guys, just want to bring that subject. How are you guys doing right now? Did you guys open the studio already? You guys fully operating as a physically studio after COVID, or are you still?
So without going down the COVID pipe too far, because as you said, we're all heartily sick of that. The recap is we had 70 something people in the studio January 2020, and then a month later, February 2020, and a month later, I was on my own practically. I was doing the it was like a bit like The Shining. It was a bit like wandering around with everyone was machines were on, but I was the only one here. Because I live quite locally, it seemed to be like a good idea. And we transitioned. I don't know how the technical team did it really, because it was almost overnight. Everyone, and I think it's the same for most people who've had to endure this. You're at the mercy of Teradici or whatever system you're using. We've all had to get to grips with Teams and Zoom and everything else, but we did it, and everybody more or less managed to make it work, and it stayed like that. But we had to come back in occasionally, small groups, because there's things like certain decisions around a monitor, a broadcast grade monitor. You can't make hoping for the best with someone's home equipment or whatever. Certain decisions on sound and editing. So, and this is especially true of Hey Dougie, the children's show, which we produced two floors down. They had to come in very small numbers, and I think that made their job even harder, because they couldn't completely settle outside the studio, and they couldn't return to the studio. They've had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. But then it's been, gradually over the past few months, we've figured out how we can have, teams come in 1 day a week or something like that. And as of, what day is it today? Tuesday. As of Monday yesterday, thank you. As of Monday, it was officially, day, let's go back to work day. But again, we're not doing everybody at the same time. We're doing, we had our 3D team in yesterday. They'll be in again on Thursday, and Dougie team were in today. And it goes like that. We did something. We've got a very good. We made a very good hiring while we were in lockdown. We've never had HR. We've always been really small. We've always done it ourselves, but we found very quickly that it was kind of overwhelming, the coordination required for everyone's well-being, because it's not really in the end about the technical stuff, is it? It's about also, that. It's
that's one of the aspects that's not really particularly covered that much in the creative industry, really, like well-being. So it's quite a new area for our industry, I would say. Yeah,
it was a very steep learning curve, because we realized, we realized ourselves, it was very strange, the whole experience, and isolating. So you're there working hour after hour on your own without any of that interaction which you would normally get. We sit in the studio with headphones on and working, ignoring each other, but there's something about being able to.
But that's an option,
Yes, it's an option, and you gather, and it's structured, and the briefings and the reviews and everything is structured. And when that's stripped away from you, it's very easy to feel lost. I think a lot of people in the industry did feel lost, and we realized that we needed somebody on this, kind of a dedicated person to look after this. So we found a very good person to come in and introduce us to the joys of HR, and it's been great, because there's who to talk to, and you haven't got to sort of figure out, do I bother Sue and Mark or Phil about this, or I feel about. You just have someone whose job it is to listen and try and help. And that's been really good. Magda, who's our HR, she hasn't yet met in person some of the production people. It's bizarre. We just realized, and there are people coming in now who I've not seen physically since we went into the first lockdown. But you kind of you forget about that, don't you? Because you have this, and you sort of think, I've spoken to James, and blah blah blah, and then you realize, but I haven't seen him, and it's a big difference. So coming back in, I think it's everybody's become, or the risk is that everybody becomes slightly institutionalized at home, and it becomes quite terrifying. It's not about even coming back in and trying to pick up where you left off. It's negotiating the journey again, and just the whole shift of life. It was really easy to go into lockdown because we were all absolutely terrified. But it's really hard to come back because you've gotten used to that. And 18 months is 18 months.
It feels weird being near other people, I found. Even now we've come out of lockdown, for a good month or so, whatever it is, it feels strange, like for example, to go to a restaurant and have like a table like 1 meter, 2 meters away from you. It just feels a bit like, I know we're all, a lot of people are vaccinated, but it's still in the back of your mind.
But it's a shift, isn't it? It's and all it will take is one or two things. I mean, I went to an open air concert 2 Saturdays ago. Went to see Max Richter at Crystal Palace Bowl, and that was outside, and there was
that a cough? Was that a cough?
Yes, and that's the new thing. It's not phones ringing in theaters and cinemas now that people don't, that people freak out about. It's a cough.
You probably shouldn't change your ringtone to a cough sound.
Yes, and of course now I'm going to be coughing because
everyone's going to stare at you.
I know. I swear to God as well. Look, I even did it before. I'm fine, and you can't see that. Of course, that could be anything. That's just a packet of gum. My son, my poor son, who has been locked in for the end of his GCSE education and most of his summer and everything, managed to get COVID and get over it and go to Reading.
Wow.
And lose himself in about 20 mosh pits. And he came home without COVID, but with a really, really bad sore throat and cold, which it was his gift to me.
This feels like a new kind of like the coming of age type film,
Yes, exactly. And so just to steer it back to your original question, people are getting used to it, but I think it only takes 1 or 2 moments where you just have a little crisis moment, maybe on the bus or the train, or going to a coffee shop and realize they've taken down all the screens and things like that, and you get used to it actually, because I think by default we are herd creatures. So we will, I could, if you're worried, James, I could take you up to the Emirates Stadium and sit you in. Well, this may not be any good unless you're an Arsenal fan, but I could sit you in the stand and you'd freak out for about 10 minutes, but then you'd be fine, because everyone else was fine. If everyone else also screaming and panicking, then it would be a very unpleasant experience. But
probably screaming and panicking for other reasons rather than COVID.
Well, yeah, like I'm an Arsenal fan. Oh God, I didn't say that.
We can edit that out, right? So kind of like taking the studio forward, like to me, AKA was the studio where it was very much everyone was on site kind of all the time. And that's what made AKA in a way. So you've been put into this situation where everyone's off site and what have you, and now they're coming back. But like going forward to the next 5-10 years or whatever, how do you feel like your workflows changed? What are the positives from this whole scenario that you're implementing in the studio?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. For years we've been, deliberately stayed small. We've had many opportunities over the years to grow. We didn't open the New York office. We didn't open any of that because it's just not us. We've never seen ourselves as a repping studio. We've always liked the idea of actually, the creative studio. The owner of another studio once described us as a boutique studio, which I took real offense about, and I was really like, it's a boutique studio. It sounds like some awful jeans shop. But I realized actually that he was absolutely right. It was a compliment, if anything, and that we are a particular thing, and our identity was really important to us. So this did change that. We figured out how to carry on as normal-ish remotely, and then we had a couple of big jobs come in last year where we needed crew, and a lot of our regular crew weren't available, freelancers, whatever. So we had to do some sort of leaps of faith and hire people, clearly good, but we'd never worked with before, and we were all a bit kind of. And I mean, Mark looked after this massive job we did for Disney, and they didn't meet at all throughout, and they sort of pulled off this amazing thing from nothing. Wow. And we sort of emerged from that going, that was actually really good. It's really good that we were able to say, well, we need so-and-so, but they're in Southern California, or we need so-and-so, they're in Germany or wherever, and it doesn't matter.
A lot of doors, isn't it? In a way.
It does, and I think that's been a really, really good thing. And I think that kind of feeds into even with things like internships, it's always generally been people who can get here, who can. So, if you've got London-based students, that's easy for them, and others, they have to kind of come and make arrangements and live here for a bit. And it's a huge hassle.
Yeah.
And I teach quite a bit. I teach at the Film Academy in Stuttgart, and I've carried on all that remotely. And if anything, it's been much more efficient because it's been really focused one-to-one time. There's never with large groups. It's always individual. And I think that kind of mentoring's possible to do with someone who, for whom where coming to London wouldn't be practical.
How would you adapt it, like an internship, to an almost like an online one? Because that's a series of one-to-ones.
Yeah, because also you lose the connection with like being in the studio and being able to be guided.
Yeah, and I want us to return to that as quickly as possible. I mean, we were talking about this today, and it's how does it normally work? Well, we take an intern from wherever, and they have a space. They're expected to be here every day. We do the thing of they attend meetings.
Cupboard, right?
They attend meetings. They're given access to pitching on projects and things like that, or depending on what they're doing, what their specialism is or what their skill set is. We figure out something for them to do, but it's very much kind of ad hoc, and then you rely on the fact that they're going to be in a room with people like Christian or Mandy or Mark or whatever, and things, osmosis works.
Yeah.
And they learn a lot from that. It's not that structured, but I think if we have to do that remotely, I think it'll have to be a lot more kind of setting tasks and then reviewing tasks. You're absolutely right. It's not the same. It's not as good. I mean,
it's more akin to an online course in a way.
Yeah. But the one reason I'd like to sort of try and keep that side of it going is that I have, maintained relations with students and teaching and mentoring the students who are on the other side. They've, like you say, the RCA students, have all been at home, sometimes in different countries, and the same for the Film Academy students. They dispersed all over, and I could still reach them. They could still reach me, and I think that's really important. So I think it's a blend, and to sort of bring back in the studio. One of the things we were quite keen on doing, we did do some months ago, was just canvass the studio. How do you feel? What do you want to do? If the opportunity arises for coming back, what do you want to do? And it was really interesting. I'd say, broadly speaking, about a third were desperate to get back to the studio. It tends to be personal circumstances, but not always. If you haven't got a dedicated space at home, or you're in a really claustrophobic environment, or it's just not conducive to what you do, then yes, you want to come back in so you can focus.
Sometimes it's nice to have that work and home separate as well. And obviously space is an absolute premium in the cities anyway. And
then there's the third who just said, I kind of really like it. I'm much more productive. I like it where I've moved to, because I'm really productive. I don't have to travel 45 minutes every day to get to you, and then 45 minutes home. And people they can start. They don't have to get up quite so early. They can start work, when they want to start work. It's not something where people are kind of just thinking, well, it's easier to be at home, because they've still got work to do. But it's something really nice about being able to choose the moment where, like when I was at home, being able to say, what, I'm going to have a coffee with my wife and the kids or something like that. And I'm going to do that for 30 minutes, and then I'll get back to work. And then I'd need to do something and then come back to work and work in the evening or something like that. And that suits a lot of people. And you suddenly realize this construct of coming together in studio, yes, there's a creative imperative to it. It's useful, it's important. but it's also wrapped up in that kind of corporate business idea that everyone has, which is this is your workplace, and this is,
it's like, you must be creative from this set time, and that's,
yes,
I think that's quite difficult for our industry.
I mean, there was another, you might be saying, but Phil, what about the other third? Well, they kind of want to sometimes come in and sometimes stay at home. So, and thankfully, I'm not the one who's going to have to work out the production schedules on jobs, because that's going to be interesting. I mean, that will be what drives things. I mean, when we did the project we did just before lockdown, the one that we delivered, just the Apple one, just before we got shut down, we just got that under the door. That was done about 15 months or something like that. That was a ridiculously short schedule, really. But, kind of good production and planning and production management really made that happen. I mean, I'm a headless chicken in those cases. I mean, Sue Goff, who's, just there's me, Mark Crast, and Sue Goff. And so, Mark's senior director, I'm a director and creative director, and Sue is our MD and senior producer. Sue is one of those sort of unflappable people who always knows there is a way to get something done. I'm one of those quite flappable people who will be, the sky is falling sometimes. I can't see how this is possibly ever going to happen.
It's yin and yang, isn't it? Symbiotic.
Yeah. And I found that, on that job, a combination of Sue and Angela also, who produced it, kind of taking all that worry away from me, meant that I could work. And then a shout out actually to Beverly, who was our production manager, who every day handed me a sheet of paper with times on it as what I was doing and what decisions I was making. So at 11:30, I'm deciding about the shape of the boat. And at 11:35, the decision is made. It was efficient thinking, and that was the only way we got it done. And I just gave myself over to that. And I think that that's the thing which is really hard to do when all your pieces aren't sitting still. If you're trying to plot out a production and you're thinking, it's about the briefing and reviewing becomes really complicated if half your animators are not here, or even one of them's not here, or only one of them is here, that kind of thing. So I think we've got a lot to learn about how to make that work, but we're not the only ones. So we'll figure it out.
We're all in it together.
And Phil, talking about, because you just said you guys now have a HR and you guys been hiring people. That is one question, moving from one bad subject, COVID, to another bad subject, Brexit.
I want to get to Brexit as well.
Yeah, not that I want to be...
You had to say it, didn't you?
But it's just, I don't know, like in the studio now we try and hire people, and compared to the past, of course there is the COVID situation where a lot of people move out of London, not talking about European in general only, but like British people also. There's no reason to be in London paying premium price for rent if you can be in the countryside, work remotely. So like, as you guys opening the studio now, so how do you feel about hiring people? Because before we used to have all, that door, the neighbor's doors open, to be able to hire. Nowadays, it's like what you said in the beginning, it's a lot more committed when you need to bring someone to move to the country without knowing the person. And
I think sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I think we've yet to really understand. I think one of the things that COVID did is it really pushed the problems that Brexit were going to create further down the line. And there's also that insidious thing of everyone blaming COVID for things which are Brexit's fault.
Yeah.
The reason there aren't enough lorry drivers is nothing to do with COVID.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's the reason things aren't on the shelves. It's the reason, without that free movement of people, it's just upended so many industries. I mean, that I hesitate a bit because I'm also really aware that I'm in one of those industries which has kept working throughout. So I'm very hesitant to complain about anything, because I have friends who are, even in the industry, those in live action, those in theatre stage, acting friends, performing, singing friends who nothing. Then of course we can move on to those involved in restaurant hospitality, all these other things, all sitting at home for months and months and months on end, whereas I'm sitting at home working because I can, and that's the kind of the luck of having chosen animation, I suppose. It was possible to do. So I'm very conscious of that before I say anything else, but it is going to be harder now to find that person in wherever and bring them over. I mean, we brought, we have people from all over the world, and so for a lot of them, there's always been a work permit situation to have to get around. Of course. But it's true that we've employed a lot from France, and we've got French, Polish. We got any Italians? I should say yes, because I'm married to an Italian and she'd be upset if I say no. Germans, yeah, so one of the things which struck me just before we went into lockdown was the number of people choosing to chase down British citizenship. My wife did that. She's an Italian citizen, and
Did she have it before Brexit or because of Brexit?
She had it. No, she had it because Brexit was coming. So she decided to do it, and so both my kids are born in Italy, so they're dual passported anyway. So, but my wife, lives and works, practices here. She's an acupuncturist. She works here, and she needed to have citizenship really to make that clear. Which is great for her to do it, but at the same time, I kind of really I resented for her the need for her to have to do that.
It shouldn't have been forced,
No, and we've had one or two others who've chosen to do that because they've made the UK their home, and they contribute to the country, to the economy, and to be suddenly told, well, actually, you're not really supposed to be here. You're kind of here, because we allow you to be.
But we'll take your tax fine.
Well, that's it. I find it really, really annoying. But so some people have to do that. But I think the true impact of that we're not going to really see for another couple of years, I don't think, because something else has been happening the industry's always been in flux. 20 odd years ago, London had a handful of studios I would call kind of people who we worried about, because they are competitors.
They're all dead now,
and they yes, and now there's countless studios, brilliant studios, and anybody with any sense opens something quite small now, or they open it remotely. It's the kind of universal everything model of.
It's like you're not competing with with a borough or a city. You will compete with the entire world now.
Yeah, and then going back further. I remember when I worked in the States for a bit at a company called Colossal Pictures on the West Coast, and that was it. There was Colossal Pictures there, and I think there was another company in New York. But now, it's the likes of Buck and Psyop, and shall I go on, Man versus Machine, and all these people there's this. The industry is absolutely exploded because the work has exploded. There's never enough people in studios and companies to fill this insatiable desire for content, and
cost of tools too, because people can learn at home nowadays as opposed to spending $500,000 on a Henry machine or whatever. But the cost of tools and the talent is more available.
When I started, I went in the sort of early mid 90s. I went and had a year at a German film school as a kind of a scholarship there, and then that's the Film Academy, and that's the place I've carried on having a relationship and teaching with for years. And they built a film industry in Southwest Germany from nothing, and it's a very big booming industry now. the likes of, you'll remember Studio Soy when they started.
They do lovely stuff.
And there's a number of companies doing really cool work now, so that actually a lot of people who would have maybe come to London because London was the place where you went may now choose not to go because they don't need to, because a combination of it's suddenly difficult, but also there's a very, very strong local marketplace. And they're not relying on, well, there's, Soy used to find that there was very little, in the way of German advertising that they could get going. So they ended up doing lots and lots of specials and shorts and things like the Gruffalo and what have you. And they just went where the work was. But I think now you could be in the middle of nowhere and earning a living, making work for, I don't know, for Southern California. It doesn't really matter where you are. It really is about what you do. So, I think possibly we won't see the need to bring so many people over because we'll work with them remotely. And more importantly, a lot of people will choose not to come, and it will affect the studio culture. I mean, everywhere, but London especially. So I think we're in a big change.
How do you, speaking of affecting the studio culture, because it's more people from everywhere, how do you keep what is, because every project AKA does looks like an AKA project. There's something about it that makes it AKA, but I think that was down to people mingling and chatting and being in the studio to some extent. So how do you keep that kind of identity when everyone's spread everywhere?
I think you're right. I think I can never see it personally. I can never look at what we do and see a pattern. I always like to think that there's just a randomness to the things that we do. We've got
maybe you're too close to it in a way,
Yeah, but we've got, hey Doug, I don't know whether I can do this. Hang on. Let me see if I can do this thing. Hang on. Probably not. I'm about to do something very risky. This is where you're going to worry now. So here we go. Backgrounds. Should I try this? Hang on.
Give it a go.
Does that work?
That is working.
Works.
That is
look at that.
Special.
That's
that is
slick. So, hang on. So you got, hey Dougie, kids TV here. Title sequence to Raised by Wolves, which is the Ridley Scott thing. You've been watching that? We should talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, we should do.
Mandy's spot for Belfair, the 9 minutes of animation we did for Black Earth Rising, and then here we are. I look at that and I just see a collision of difference. But someone else, look how slick I'm going to be now. Hang on.
Nice.
Someone else, yeah, look at that, seamless. Someone else would look at all of this and see patterns.
There's something there. I'm not quite sure what the tangible element is, but I feel like there is something.
There is, and I think you've nailed it. Actually, what it is that it's like a kind of Venn diagram thing, isn't it? It's where it's what Steve does and what Mark does and what Mandy does. There's an intersection at some point where there's crossover, and there's something which makes it sit next to something quite different without really jarring too much. I'll turn it off because that's too much.
I guess what some people don't realize, AKA is quite a collaborative studio in that with all the directors in house, it very much cross-pollinates between director. Like one director can direct a job, but there'll be elements from the other directors in the studio. Yes.
Sometimes that just happens naturally. Other times it's really deliberately structured. I mean, Here We Are was a great example of that. I mean, director Mandy Wickens was the production designer, the art director on that film. Steve was a character designer on it. Mark did some amazing storyboard work for me, and at some point, I mean, even Christian helped out with some voice work, so we replaced him. But in fairness, I replaced myself as well. But no, I mean, everybody's willing to kind of jump in on things. And Marcus Armitage did all the, I'm going to do it again. All the,
I hope everyone sat down.
Yeah. When we when we did Here We Are, I had this. I knew there was a point where I wanted to animate that. You see that?
No.
Kind of. It's kind of showing through.
There you go.
It is the background.
No, I can.
And so Marcus and Justine really put. I'll do it off again. It's like just pulling in the sort of seniors and everybody coming in on that job. So that to me was a really good example of where people also work kind of under the radar, because Mandy's art direction, Mandy Wickens, if you know her work, I mean, the film doesn't look like her work, but what she brought to it was an understanding of how to take the production design team and get them all working in harmony and get them all working in Oliver's kind of style. And that's not an easy thing to do. And that's something we do a lot in the studio. So if somebody's available, got time, they'll pitch in with help or advice on something else. It's not compartmentalized into, well, this is my job. And I've always admired the fact that, we do competitive pitching, so we'll have, 1, 2, 3, or everybody pitch on a job. And then either we'll put everything in front of the client, or a selection, or just one. But people don't seem to get resentful about that. And there's some really lovely work, say for Black Earth Rising, the different directors did for that, and you just think, wow, that could have been really different had it been done that way, and instead of the way it was done, which is beautiful. And people put their heart and soul into their own pitch, but you learn very, very quickly. One of the most important things on this is to let stuff go. That it doesn't matter. If it's not rejection, it's just selection. So I should get that into a t-shirt, shouldn't I?
It's not a divorce counsel as well.
Yes.
It's nice to see in a way, because you guys work, repping directors, but in the same time, when the job starts, you guys work as a studio as well, where everyone collaborate and help as well.
I mean, yeah, I think that's how it works. And to go back to sort of feed this back into what, how is this being affected? Because I think, James, you're right, that is the identity of the studio, is that. And yet we've managed to do that remotely by maintaining the existing relationship, certainly. So, I sit and have a one-to-one chat with Mark, or with Steve, or whoever. That works. I think the challenge will be making sure we can build those kind of chat relationships with other people. You kind of think, well, do we need to schedule more times where we've just got an open line and we're working and just chatting, without that becoming too oppressive? I think actually as we move forward, we will probably schedule more time where we come together and chat, and maybe the studio will become somewhere where you gather to kind of kick your ideas around and sort stuff out. Yeah, and then go off, bury yourself in the work for a week and come back, that kind of thing. Ask me in a year, because we are making it up as we go along, according to what feels right. I mean, Mark, Sue, and I have never claimed to have any master plan, or it's always been on gut instinct. Thankfully, Mark and Sue's gut instinct,
all right, so
they tend to be right. So, and I get, they hold me to account. But I'm pretty positive, feeling pretty positive about it. If you'd asked me this question six months ago, I would have put a very brave face on it and said, it's all good, it's all fine. But I would have been quietly terrified about, what was coming, because I couldn't see how we were going to come out of it in any shape or form.
This is where Sue has to step in.
Yes, exactly. Sit down, breathe, put this paper bag on your head, and I think we will work it out. And more importantly, I do think a better environment will emerge, or is emerging from it. I think it's going to take a bit of work, but I'm feeling optimistic about it. And it's really exciting to think actually now there's this sort of movement of people coming back in, and we had Marcus in recently sitting. It was great to see him sitting there working at the desk, and we've got one or two others I want to kind of see them coming back in on a more regular basis.
It does,
and that will happen. Go on.
It does kind of feel like a bit of a new frontier in a way, because it will inevitably affect everything. The way we eventually find our footing. So it's quite exciting.
You've reminded me of something. I did I've been doing things like feedback sessions for students. You do that, say, at the RCA or wherever. And I've a number of schools where I've been on. I've talked to the graduating students, 2020 and 2021. I mean, the ones in 2021, arguably, were much more traumatized because they had thought that it would be over.
Yeah.
And as we all did, but something common to all of those talks, group talks, is the question: what is industry going to do? How are we going to get our foot in the door? How are we going to get our internships? How are we going to do that? Because we're graduating, and what do we do? And the answer is, it's in some ways slightly easier to be hired now, because the barrier of can they sit over there has gone. It is really about what do they do and how they can do it, what their skill sets are, what they can bring to a project. But
I remember going to London with just a show reel. I used to just go around like knocking on doors or whatever, and like a reel. Whereas I guess now you just like spam Zoom addresses and see who picks up.
You've got to be. Here's how I think it works. I think the direct email is to the studio is we have a tried and tested route there of because we get loads every day, and it's looked at. Everything's looked at. Not everything's replied to.
Also, the not to interrupt, but like the pro tip is don't make your email look frigging generic. Dear insert name, just copy and paste, because there's so many of that, and correct spelling of names as well is always a good one.
We put a lot of on our website. Our current website, we're about to have a new one, thank goodness, after too long. But our current website, we've got loads of advice there on what to do. And I'm always curious about people who clearly haven't read that, because they haven't done what I would do, which is look at the website of the place that you're applying to. But anyway, I see a lot of work, partly through work that's shown to me by my students, and they show me the work of their peers and what have you, and the people that industry kind of bubbling soup of so and so was at college with so and so, that thing that happens. It's really suddenly 5 people are sitting there and they kind of all know each other, and you think, well, how did that all come together? And it just did. It's momentum. But I'm getting to a point, don't worry. The students who would find that difficult, they have these other outlets. Now I'm back on track now. I Instagram, for goodness sake. My bookmarks in Instagram or whatever are just, it's off the scale. I follow so many interesting people, and through them interesting people, and I find that's a really great way to find designers, art directors, animators, whatever, because people have learned how to use that small space to really in a very impactful way. But when I was talking about, well, you could do to the students, saying, well, you can utilize all these tools to get your work in front of us, I realized something really important, which is the most important people that they know are the people they're at college with right now, that peer group, because they are emerging and graduating into an industry which has been totally upended and is being rethought and rebuilt.
Yeah.
And established studios like ourselves will steer our way through it and we will talk about the wonders of opening up and all the things that would, but actually, if I was a graduating student, I'd be really keen who was there and who are the people I know that actually where we could maybe, 2 or 3 of us could put something together and, make our own thing. And
somewhat power in numbers in a way. Like if you've got like 3 or 4 people on the team, then you've got 3 or 4 people helping get your work out there and in front of other people.
Yeah. I mean, we've been fortunate enough over the years to work with some really amazing and interesting people have come through the doors. Sometimes for long periods of time, others for very short periods of time. But we worked with Shinola back in the day, very briefly on a couple of ads, just before they kind of exploded into that kind of that force of nature which they became. And I think they taught us a lot in that short time, because we were, we had Kenny came to work for us from the RCA, and it took us about 3 or 4 weeks to realize there were other people as well. So all this amazing work wasn't just Kenny, and it was like, wow, that's really interesting that they're reinventing that kind of team structure. Because when I went through college, it was all, and I think this is a problem slightly of a lot of UK institutions, is they focus very much on the director or the auteur or the individual, which is great. And I would say that a lot of the French and German schools focus too much on the team. But somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot. Yeah, there's somewhere in the middle is a sweet spot where you have people who are unique individual voices, but they understand how to put a crew together and how to pull resources and make amazing things. And over the years we've had I'm just trying to think of names I can drop. David O'Reilly,
he always wore incredibly pointy shoes from what I remember.
Yes. David O'Reilly was I remember it very clearly. He's brilliant, beautifully talented artist and everything, but he figured out something which was, we were, the rest of us were all chasing this aesthetic of how can we make it look like film? How can we make it look like, this tunnel vision slightly? And he said, but don't you think there is a beauty in the rawness of the computer? And I remember him telling me this once, saying, I don't want to mess around with renderers and things. I want to just work with what the machine can do and make something beautiful, make something compelling, which is what he did,
He's right in that regard.
Yeah. And he's arguably kicked off, he started again another sway of people who just explored the technology, and people are trying to sort of, and people are doing this now in
do you ever play
VR,
do you ever play his video game? Is it Everything on the PlayStation?
Yes. Yes.
I just love the animation on it, where it's just, how are we going to make this horse move? Oh, we'll just rotate it. Just really nice little details like that are great.
There's a I mean, with what we do, we're very illustrative, and we have a certain thing about character and a certain thing. We are who we are, and that comes across in the work which you just you've looked at, and but I personally really appreciate when somebody is creating animation at a very kind of raw, visceral level. It doesn't matter that it doesn't have to be building upon that legacy of classic filmmaking.
Sometimes we just get stuck in our rut, don't we? Really,
yeah.
It takes someone to to say, look, check this out, and that's all it is in a way.
It is, and I again, it's one of the reasons I still like to teach, because it's nothing to do with age. It's actually all to do with time. People doing a 2-year or 3-year course have often time to think and try out stuff, which once you get onto that kind of industry treadmill, and I'm talking, let's be honest. I mean, the reason we all do commercial animation is, it's interesting, but it's also, we have bills to pay and families to keep and all this stuff. There's all this stuff that you pile on your back as you go through life stops you at some point just really just musing over things. And college is one of those times when you can just do nothing but that. And I really encourage that in the students that I teach. It's like, so this is a moment to really think in a different way, not to be like us. Don't be like it. It's great if you've got the talent for that, but is there anything you could do which will just, change the way that I think about the media?
I guess this is where almost like mental health comes into play. Where it's important to take that step back. Take your holidays, have a proper weekend. If you can, try not to work, all night or whatever, because that's the animation industry all over. Is, oh look, I'll work this late and over the weekends. But I think it's important not to kind of keep your mental health, recharge your batteries, and just so that you can think about things and take time to think about things differently.
You can get lost in it as well. I always describe the commercials as we do is the commissioned work now, because there's a distinction. We do a lot more commissioned work now, I think, than commercials, meaning we're these sort of interesting projects, like things like title sequences and Black Earth Rising, things like that. They're other. They're not ads. They're other things, but you're still being hired to do them. But what's endlessly fascinating about them is that they make you work outside of where you would be working otherwise. They all ask you to solve something which you would never have thought of trying to solve, and that's why I've loved all the projects we've worked on because of that. Because I wouldn't ever have dreamt of trying that out or that out. And take a director like Steve Small, who's started off his career in Disney and super traditional animation. I mean, his range now is extraordinary, and I think that's true of all of the directors. And I could go through and I could point to very contrasting things that they've done, but that's all to do with having to solve a brief, where you have to kind of park yourself over there and solve a brief. And for some people, that's really invigorating. They want more of it. And they want to do more of that. I mean, say, someone like Dave Prosser, who was with us for some years before he founded Moth, has a real talent for that. He's a real talent for clicking into a mindset which you wouldn't otherwise see. And you can really, and he's with these fellow cohorts at I describe them as cohorts. I don't even know what cohorts means. The rest of Moth, they've
go with compadres.
Compadres. They've got that kind of like-minded puzzle which fits together in a certain way, which I think we've got, and it's very hard to replicate. And it's once you find your other pieces,
it's chemistry,
you've got to go with them. Yeah. And then another example in a different way would be someone like Ben Buckley, who obviously created The Amazing World of Gumball. I mean, Ben came to us out of college, an amazing graduation film, and just he was for me, every pitch he did, he was knocking it out of the park, and I was just like, this is amazing. And for whatever reason, the commercial, the advertising clients, they said no, and he got more and more disillusioned with it, to the point where he was just, what am I doing? And he had this light bulb moment one day, which is, I'm on the wrong track. This is not my thing. And so, he took a huge risk and went, and sort of threw his weight behind trying to get one of those Cartoon Network series. There was a kind of a big competitive process going on for a couple of years with different teams and some amazing work from different directors. And Ben got picked.
Gumball's amazing though. I love the whole aesthetic of it. Like, did such a great job.
It's beautiful. And what I always find funny is that I look at that and I go, it's like almost, I see in the characters, that's like the one it's his revenge, because they're all not against us, but against all the rejection. Because some of the, it's like if you took all of his all of the pictures that nobody loved and put them together. That's the idea behind Gumball, is that nothing looks the same. And it's extraordinary. There was nothing else like that. And it was, I don't know how much of that was just a light bulb moment, or he just felt, or it was a particularly structured bit of thinking. I don't know. I'd have to ask him. But the result is almost, if he had to go through that pain of rejection, look at what came out the other end. That's perseverance. And then say Mick Graves, who the animation director on the show, and who's now also directing his own show at Cartoon Network, he was with us for, I think 15 years. God, he'll probably email me and say it was never that long. Mick just needed something to get him into his true calling, which is series episodes. It's in the same way I can imagine, the students who might come into the industry and then find actually they've got their futures in games, or their futures in, one of my animators on Here We Are is doing, is really involved in VR and quill stuff and everything, and it's fascinating. I just waved my kit at you, but you didn't. You weren't impressed. So that was my lockdown. That was my no, God no. It's the this was my lockdown purchase because I couldn't go anywhere.
I kind of want to do like virtual Zoom meetings, but with a VR headset. So you've got people sat there, a bit like that scene in RoboCop where you've got the people in the TV screens having like a meeting.
As long as you mean RoboCop 1, not RoboCop 3, which I saw. RoboCop 3 was on telly last night, and I found myself. I watched 10 minutes of it, and before I realized, what am I doing?
Yeah, it's really bad.
So bad.
What was I going to say about that? I had a point I was going to make about that. I don't know. No, you don't want to do this in VR because it's too freaky. Because if you've got the Oculus setup, which is all hooked into Facebook, they encourage you all the time to go into virtual rooms with loads of other people. It's really creepy because you're sitting there in some auditorium watching something, and then you realize that all the avatars next to you are real people. And
that's weird, isn't it?
No, I went into one and then I sort of took the helmet off and hid it and thought, no, I'm never going back there again. That's just too disturbing.
So talk about episodes. I guess it's probably a good segue into Dougie, because we kind of have to talk about Dougie, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We do. As soon as you used it on the poster, yes.
Exactly. Well, it fitted, didn't it? It's just like, that's it. That works. What was the process for Dougie? Like, did you guys pitch for that? Was it, did the BBC were like, hey, look?
No, it's a completely self-generated thing. That what happened there was a time when it was on our radar that we wanted to do something like that. I think we'd done Lost and Found, which was effectively the first children's thing we'd ever done. I mean, JoJo is a film for adults. Varmints, I think is always seen as being a sort of an older children as teenagers. It gets used in schools as an environmental kind of piece, but it's not little kids, definitely. But all of our stuff was for adults. But then, the kind of collision of chance that took us up to meet Oliver and to do Lost and Found, and for me to do that, it just took a decision in the meeting to say, I really want to do this, and I had I had nothing to show that I could do that. I just thought, I want to do this. If I'm going to do anything for kids, this is going to be it. And we really, really enjoyed the process of Lost and Found. And we thought, and also we were probably by that point, a lot of us were a little bit older and we had kids, and the insight of parenthood, when it's 5 a.m. you're trying desperately to keep a small child engaged with something on the television, and you're watching some awful piece of whatever, and you think someone's we've got to be able to do better than this. That was a conversation, and Grant, who was I never expected it to be coming from Grant, because he'd up until just before then, his last film had been A Morning Stroll, which was our one and only zombie movie. Actually, no, he did that thing for Graminator, yeah, just there, so which is slightly fruity piece. So you wouldn't necessarily think this is somebody who's going to be doing kids animation, but Grant's out of all of us over the years, Grant is always the one who he always had the most surprising variety of ideas and bits of graphic. You never knew what was going to come next. And he was really
had like quite like, I mean, it's like in a daring one, quite a nice like childish quality about him and his work in like a really nice way.
Very childish. No, he's I do a lot of these. I did a lot of postcards and collages and things like that, and I've always sort of emphasized that collision of things. And Grant was a godsend for that, because there was always something to use. But anyway, so he had this idea, and it was a couple of pages in a sketchbook, really. And we sat down around the meeting table, and he said, "I've got this idea. It's about a dog, and it's a big dog that runs an after-school club, and it's a bit like." And he just touched on a few things, like it's about getting kids to do things and about having fun. So and it reminded me of a show that I saw when I was growing up called Why Don't You, which was a kind of a you might be just old enough to remember that.
I am.
Why Don't You, subtitle with the subheader, just turn off the television set and go and do something else boring instead. Probably that is the longest children's TV title ever.
What was the title? The theme song was like, Why Don't You? Something.
It's a bit like that. It's a bit like that.
I mean, I've not watched it for a long, long time, to be fair.
Yeah, but that's not bad, actually. I'm not about to do it. But anyway, so he outlined this, and it was a light bulb moment. It was this is great. And I'd say from that first meeting, Dougie's always been there. Dougie wasn't called Dougie initially. Dougie was called Chop Chop.
Chop Chop.
So we developed a show called Chop Chop and Friends. And then we discovered that one of the most useful things we should have known, which is always check to see if somebody's already registered that name. And there was this fantastic sort of frantic 3-month period where everybody in the studio was trying to come up with a new name for this thing. And that thing where you've named something and it can't possibly be anything else. For me, it was a kind of, oh my God, this is always going to be like something that used to be Chop Chop.
Like but, your child, it's hard to rename after.
Yeah, but when Dougie came up, it was actually suddenly, it was like Chop Chop just got pushed right out. But actually, that was what it should have been all along. I mean, getting that show to screen was ridiculously quick by general standards. We produced a pilot episode-ish and a sort of a little Bible and things, and took that to Cartoon Forum. And everybody we met there said, well, your first year you go and you just find your way around. Maybe you get a few handshakes and everything, but next year you'll come back because you'll have learnt your lessons and blah, 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 and you'll have worked on the show and, listen to the advice and everything like that. And we had just a bunch of offers immediately.
Wow.
To develop it. We eventually went with the BBC, primarily because they didn't want to change anything, and they got the show. Grant had kind of worked up the vision of it then. So by the time it became Dougie, and the show now, well, it was not a lot. I mean, I think there was an extra kid to begin with who got fired. One of the characters, Bertie, I think it was. Bertie's been employed as a bus driver in the series. The character's been employed. He always looked too old. But the other characters, we had some name changes for things which were slightly easier. But the thing was, and I can say all this, really because I consider myself very much an outsider on it. It's satellite. It's a Dougie is something which happens, within the studio, and it sort of involves lots of people, but there's this core group, and who've only consolidated over these years. I mean, we're doing into our 4th season now.
Are they called Squirrels or?
Yeah. The kids? Sorry,
No,
the
the
actual people,
core
sorry.
group.
No, they're grown
Because
ups.
they should be.
No, oh, you made me lose my train of thought there. So Grant suddenly had to be a series director overnight. This was when we were in Berwick Street, and you'll remember Berwick Street, which tiny floors, all stacked up, so about 5 floors in the basement. When I think that we made series 1, I think on one of those rooms, I don't know how. Now I look at it and think, how on earth did we cope, or did they cope? And that first season was trying to just do everything the way we thought it should be done. And I can tell you that the way the show is produced now is very different from how we did it in the first instance. They've learned a lot. I look at it and I think I just came off a 15-month job where I was working 7 days a week for a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. And I consider that was one of the hardest schedules I've ever had to deal with to get it done. And I still don't think it is as hard as Dougie. Children's TV, episodic, 6 minutes, you do 52 episodes in a season. And you've got to, the ideas have got to be there. Everything's got to hit its mark because there's broadcasters all over the world waiting, is incredibly stressful. So that show.
Do you have like TX dates to hit? Because I guess now it's a little bit different in terms of streaming, but is it broadcast as well?
We've just delivered, I think, the 13 new episodes have just gone onto iPlayer now, and these are all lockdown episodes. Did
they ever get to wear masks?
Yes, well, there's been a bit of that, and I think there's been some references, what have you, but that show really changed the studio because we had to learn a completely different production method, and that was kind of alien to the way that commercials are done and short films are done. But it, that again has meant that we've learned how to do other things. So, I mean, Dougie is a flagship piece for the studio, certainly. I think it's dominated who Grant is for the past, how many years now? But I know there's loads of stuff bubbling under there that will explode out in a different way at some point. But it's also been really inspiring for all the directors to see, well, look, that's possible. I mean, again, that show got commissioned, and its first season was on TV in a very short amount of time compared to most TV, and we had to learn on the job. That's for sure.
When you guys first started it, or when you did the pilot, I guess is probably more apt. Did you ever suspect that it would become like the behemoth it has become? Because it is, it's literally everywhere.
Yeah.
No, this is a really important thing. We had a lot of advice in the early days from people who knew how children's TV should be done. And these are people who will say the Bible, of what you do, it's got to be like this. And so you can't have that character, you've got to have this character. And in fact, Dougie can't be Dougie. Dougie has to be so-and-so. And we had a lot of that because that's what successful children's TV will be. Well, we had all these, there's people who spent far too much time in the sort of ed psych ends of it and the market research end of it, and looking at everything that's
too binary.
But they're looking at half a dozen different shows and combining all the sort of the success points into this other hybrid thing, which they think, well, this is the ingredients of a successful show. That's not true. There are those often unique elements that make that show what it is. And if you try to, if you take the big hit shows, I mean, even you take Gumball and you try and do to it what you quote unquote should do with children's TV, it would be awful. And we had no idea that it would be as successful as it has been, but we did know it would be the show we wanted to make. And I mean, the one thing I've always been really grateful, proud of with Mark and Sue is that they're very, very keen that, you know, what we do with something like that matters. I mean, I said, you know, we all had seen enough terrible TV that we thought we could do better. It would have been very easy, very, very easy to have sent the animation overseas and done it in a very, you know, we did it the most expensive and hardest way possible, which is all in-house in London.
By hiring French.
And but it meant that the show is the show which we want it to be. And you know, the episodes that keep coming, I'm always amazed, saying I'm really proud of my, you know, association with this. And I think it's something which will have a legacy. That's really important.
Definitely.
It's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but I mean, I knew that Grant going into it was going to have a really high bar. And you know, somebody says, well, what's it made in? You say Flash. I mean, it's, you know, it's Adobe Animate now, which I think is a strange name for,
yeah.
You know.
They didn't need to change it, did they?
You know, it's animated in Flash. Sounds really, you know, but it's animated in Animate. Anyway.
And then song in song.
Yes, exactly. But you know, if you look at the show, you look at the animation in it, it's lovingly done. I mean, and it's working with a very reduced set of tools, very reduced palette, reduced movement, everything. But it's, from an animation point of view, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Those kind of those, you know, you can, if you really want to geek out and look at it frame by frame, some of the things the team do, you can see them having fun and confounding expectations, and you're thinking that's so elegantly done. And this is a kids show. And you know what? I think that the audience sees, no, they don't see it. They feel it.
I just watch it for the smears, to be honest.
Yeah, me both. But, you know, I mean, what is it about a show like that which, you know, makes little kids, you know, love it, as opposed to another one? Well, you know, kids will watch a lot of rubbish if they're allowed, but they do know how to spot good stuff.
Yeah.
And
I think it's got heart, and it feels like it's, you know, it feels legitimate, you know, it's from the right place. I think that's the difference between that and like, I don't know, Baby Shark.
We've never tried to make a show where we talked down to kids. It's very direct, you know. It's sort of how you should talk to children. You talk to them on an equal footing.
It feels like it's from the kids' POV.
Yeah, there are definitely things that are in there for the parents, but it's not. They're not over the top of the head kind of jokes, you know, for smirking at or things like that. They're just amusing.
Yeah.
And it is actually, you know, because it's not just little kids who watch it; it's their parents as well. And
it's stuff like you know, it's like the rabbits. You know, it's very much like Dylan from Magic Roundabout. Yeah, man. And it's, you know, it's just nice to get the references.
And you know, they managed to. They've had so many different kinds of film references and cultural references and social, cultural, artistic references in there over the episodes. It's always. I'm always being caught out by something I didn't expect to see. But look, we never expected it to be what it is, and we've had to really adapt as it's happened. And you know, I'm sometimes I'm just amazed at what's been accomplished with it, because it's really part of our landscape now. And yet what's really important as well is that it hasn't completely ended up defining the studio. It's its own thing. Yeah. And thankfully the studio has still been able to make other things which you can contrast against it. So
It's definitely going to influence like generations of children in terms of like I remember when I was a kid, and if I speak to people similar age, oh, do you remember like Pigeon Street or Whizbit or or Bagpuss or what have you? I think it's got that kind of like longevity where people people look back at it lovingly, and it kind of becomes a part of the soul in a way.
It's important, isn't it? I mean, we've all got our, each generation has its touchstones of these were my shows when I grew up, and I get quite emotional when I think there's a generation of kids who grew up who they don't care who made Dougie or where it's from or anything, but Dougie is theirs. And I think, wow, because if I put this into some context, I talked about the commercials that we do and all these things which are great for us. They're great creative challenges, and could I do this? And we try that, and then they kind of disappear into time, and then occasionally you get to make a short film or something longer or whatever, which you put your heart and soul into, but that sort of disappears as well, because they're often made for your peers. It's lovely having a film shown at Annecy to 600, 700 other animators and not being booed, but it's contained, isn't it? And you do something like that and you just realize it doesn't belong to you anymore. I mean, I think the moment for me where I realized, oh my goodness, this has really gotten to be something, was a couple of years ago. Dougie was included in the annual Regent Street Hamleys toy character parade, where loads of open top buses drive up Regent Street, and it's got all the cartoon characters. There's Pepper, there's Pepper, and there's so and so. And there was a guy in a Dougie suit waving, and I was just stood there going, "This is just nuts."
Because I saw you remember it from like the first sketches that Grant did or whatever to this thing on a parade. That's kind of crazy.
Do you want to see a few of them?
Yeah, sure. If you got them handy, definitely.
Can I do that? Hang on, let me just see.
You do Sheen's share screen?
I know. I reckon I can do this. Hang on. If I do.
Or are you going for a background?
No, I'm going to try and. Well, I'll have to do a screen share, which means
I gave you permission already.
Look at that. There you go. That's Keynote. So if I share that. Oh, actually, you know what? I didn't do the all important optimizing.
So actually, just a quick question: how far in terms of design, that character design, was Dougie when it first started, or was that? Because I think Robin Davey helped out with you guys. Is that correct? I think that's right.
Yeah. Let me see. These are Grant's drawings. Nice. This is. I pulled these up because he gave a talk about and he'll forgive me for using this because these were also used. We ended up in the Design Museum in 2019. They actually put on a whole thing, which was lovely. It had all this stuff because they said it's an example of really good, tight, well-considered design in children's TV. It was a real honor to be there. But then they had this other room which they just built, this kind of soft play area, which is the Dougie Land, which I think I might even have some pictures of it here, which is just incredible. But can you see that? Is that full screen?
Yeah, it's working for us.
So Grant, these are the kind of things that Grant was doing. Here we go. Fun, energetic, and most of all. So this has become a talk, but it's not. I don't want it to be that. So these here, that's 2011. Look, these are bits and pieces. I've probably got. If Grant is ever watching this, he's already rolling his eyes, saying you've got this in the wrong order. There you go, chop and friends.
Chop.
I don't know whether you can see my. No, can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Bertie. Poor Bertie. And this is the excuse me. This is the
wag.
Desperate search for a new name until Hey Dougie came up. But those characters. I don't want to do the whole presentation. Sorry, but those characters there. Oops. Really came from just these sketches. It was, but you can see. I mean, look at the rabbits was there quite early.
The rabbit.
I think, maybe Happy was probably one of the first characters. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask. But it was was really quite well formed.
Yeah, it is.
In Grant's mind from the outset. If I jump forward, so all of the kind of development. Oh, they're moving.
I love the
all the development
naivety of the sketches.
Sorry,
I love the naivety of the sketches. They're so nice.
Considered, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Okay.
Naivety. But that, the development of the world obviously is something that comes about through the creative process, which comes out of those characters. And then this whole idea, which I think again was really early on, of tying everything to a badge that you would earn. And each episode is based upon the characters, earning their first aid or cake or drawing badge or what have you. But yeah, that's Grant now. He does it 52 times per season, 6 hours of animation in 4,000 shots.
Wow.
And this is a fraction of the characters that we now have, but every character is given such care and attention. I found this of Choo Choo. If she'll play, I think I have to probably press the next button. Here we go. Come on, look at this.
Hello, sweetlings.
I love her voice.
Yeah.
No blueberries. What are we going to do?
There's a real simplicity.
Aw, cool, man.
But if you saw that smear, it's beautifully done.
Hi, Henny.
Oh, how marvelous!
And even there you go.
I think it's my favorite.
Yeah.
Nigel? Nigel!
These are my favorite. Oh yes.
Just cruising the autobahn, man. Well, let's bounce.
And oh god, I'm not going to make you watch that. Sorry.
I thought you were gonna miss that.
Okay,
So
let me. I have forgotten something really important. Am I back? I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. So full screen. I'm off of that. It wasn't the moment. The open top bus, which really floored me. I was watching Newsnight a couple of years ago on TV, and the Styx song had been out, and then they'd done a version for the World Cup called Kick. I can remember the lyrics. Kick, 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 kicky, kicky, kick, kick. So
Genius.
and they introduced this and played this out over the credits of Newsnight. I've actually got it on video somewhere, and I thought that's really, really bizarre. And I was sort of looking at it, and I remember it went off, and Christina came in, and I was going, and I couldn't speak for a minute because nobody told me it was going to be on. And I thought, I think we've made something which people know about. And I follow a number of people on Instagram who are obsessed with Hey Dougie, and there's grown adults. There's a great guy called Dougie Dad, who's really kept me laughing over the past few years with it's really part of his life, and
Is that you, Thiago?
yes, is that you? Which is wonderful. And I don't think you can easily repeat that kind of thing.
No, definitely not.
I would like to think we would still do something else in the next few years, which would really surprise us again. Probably the stuff we did recently, for Black Earth Rising, and the thing for Ridley Scott, the Raised by Wolves, is again very out of character. I think the only reason we were approached to do Black Earth Rising was the director Hugo Blick had met somebody, and he'd said, "I'm looking for an animation studio. I don't know where to look." And I think had he gone looking, he would have found our website and thought, "Well, that's not them," and that would have been it. But the person he spoke to said, "Oh, I know, it's a really good studio. AKA. And I think they actually said it, because they do Hey Dougie, but because they thought, well, animation,
Yeah.
And then Hugo came in to see us and was perfectly happy to give us a kind of shot at coming back with something. It was like, you want what? And I love it when that happens, when people find us without knowing us, and we stumble into things which just do that.
The breadth of work to back it up, though, is such a broad spectrum. Obviously, like AKA is known for obviously now Hey Dougie and a lot of character stuff, but there's definitely that broad spectrum of just like more design, darker design led or what have you as well.
Yeah, and I think that's just a shared trait. I mean, that's a shared trait that Mark, Mandy, Steve, Christian, Marcus, myself, we all have an interest in something which is, for us, I suppose, darker, more brooding, more, and it's a reaction sometimes against the commercial things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, weirdly, I think with Grant, it was almost like Dougie was a reaction against some of the more graphic, harder edged things that he'd been doing. It was the opposite surprise. Out of all of us, I would never have expected Grant to be the one to come up with the hit kids show. So what do I know? But I should have known, because of the track record of how the different directors have always behaved, I suppose. It's, and Grant had done that from the outset. I mean, when he first joined us, we did one of the biggest pitches for an ad. Remember Compact Computers?
Yeah.
Remember when they were the number one computer on the planet? Well, we did an advert for them. We did a few adverts for them, but and we worked with a guy called John Webster, who was just a legend in the advertising industry. Sadly, no longer with us. But he came up with so many incredible campaigns. He was like one of the biggest people in advertising we'd ever had through the doors. It was just astonishing. He's a kind of a Ridley Scott figure in the advertising world, if you know what I mean. Well, I don't know Ridley came from advertising, but that's besides the point. But you know what I mean? He just all those great campaigns he did. And he came up with this idea of a very determined bird looking for a worm. And we pitched 16, 17 routes on that. We pulled in everybody we could just to give, because John just said, I want to see as many ideas as you can. And we lined a room in Berwick Street with, and these are the days when we printed things out, and actually even even put them on polyboard so they would stand up. We had a rail running around the room, and we had all these different things around the studio. That was our pitching process, and it was like a little. And then John came in, and he literally started at one end, and they were all the same idea: a determined bird, and an interpretation of that. And he went just once around the room, and Grant had said, I'm probably embellishing this slightly, but just let me, because I know that Grant had come in last, and maybe I was going to say 3 days before, but probably more like a week before or something like that. He said, can I have a go? And he was our runner at the time, and he was like, yeah, sure, of course you can. And didn't think, well, Grant's just going to do something that's going to be nice. That's, it's going to be good, but I know who's going to get this. It's going to be that one or this one. And Grant had just done something, and I was printing it out, thinking, what the hell is this? This is really weird. This is great, but no, he's never going to pick that. That's just And John just walked all the way around and went, that one. That's great. And so Grant went from being that day, I think, went from being a runner to this junior director, like that, just because he got given the opportunity to be someone else. That's and to nice. confound expectation, I suppose, which is really important.
It just goes to show you never know where the winning idea is going to come from, really. So all the people in the studio must.
It can be. I mean, you know what? It can be really intimidating sometimes for the younger directors or designers to pitch up against, a Mark or a Steve or whatever. But time and time again, it's just whoever's found that thing, and they've actually really understood, by luck or design, what the client has buried in their brain that they can't articulate, but they recognize as soon as they see it. And that happens time and time again.
Well, I think we're running on quite a long time at the moment, so we should probably start wrapping up soon.
Do you want to ask some questions?
Yeah, there's a question on YouTube. Do you want to go through it, Thiago?
You can ask.
Okay.
Are there people watching?
Yeah,
there's mum, there's dad.
Grant, he just
Grant.
said hello. I'm joking.
Oh, Cristobal's watching, so that's nice to see him.
Hi, Cristobal. Miss you.
One question from Copperbeard says, I've heard agencies say their top tier sexy showreel jobs make less than 10% of the day-to-day work. The majority of time is taken up with much smaller, duller bits. Is this the same at AKA?
Yes. I always used to describe it, it's when you go on the website and you look at the work or the showreel or whatever, it's the classic iceberg. What you see is the tip, and there's loads of stuff underneath it. I would say that's not as true as it used to be. When in the days when we were really doing, loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of ads, and none of the other stuff. No TV show, no short films, no series films, no half-hour films, no title sequences and stuff. And it was just ads. Then you'd have to do stuff which, everything you do, once you've said yes, you commit to and you deliver. Doesn't matter, but a lot of it changes because of circumstance, and I think, when I started in the industry, I would only ever really work with from the advertising side and an art director, copywriter, and a producer, and that was often either really strong, and I worked with some really good ones. That's how Orange came about and other things like that. Really, really smart, creative people, unfortunately, who didn't really stick around in advertising because they were on to better things quite quickly. But
advertising
the work we did
saps your soul a little bit, I think.
Well, a little bit, and there's a massively high turnover of creatives in the industry. But so it would either be, well, this is going to be good, or this is going to go astray. But it got increasingly difficult when the structures started to change, and so we regularly see, very large groups of creatives, teams, on a project, on a campaign, and you can fill a meetings room, 20 people sometimes, and you're never quite sure who you're talking to, and so you're trying to pick the things which you think are going to be good. You need to pick jobs as well which are going to earn some money, otherwise everything falls apart. We do a lot of work because we want to do it, if I put it that way. It's not money, it's not bringing money into the studio, and I'll confess there is a number of pieces where we've underwritten it, and just because you think this is so good, they haven't got the money to do it, but we can make this happen because and often it's been because we've been doing a big campaign. When we were lucky enough to have the Lloyd's TSB account before they split, we did 5 years, 48 commercials.
Wow.
And they were great client, great agency, and that work kept on coming. And we built a pipeline on the back of that, and we were able to take on smaller jobs because quite often you'd be waiting for reviews and for approvals, or you had crew booked because the next 2 commercials were already coming down the line, and so we were able to do other things with those people, and take on jobs which we couldn't have done otherwise. But what's happened, what always happened was there'd be something which we couldn't turn down because it was going to pay for whatever for X time. It's going to pay this much of the overhead for so long that we just have to try to do it. But you knew it was a kind of creative car crash.
Yeah.
And often everybody involved knew it was, and but those got less and less, I have to say. Now, and I'm sort of trying to respond to the question directly now, we say no a lot more often now, if we don't feel we can make something of it, do something with it. And we're quite happy to do a very broad, popular kind of advertising campaign if it makes sense to us. You know, if it's a vehicle for doing something, well, this would be fun. It doesn't have to be the most cutting edge, creative, unusual thing. It can just be fun, you know. But I know that the road to there's been paved with, I mean, you know,
the pain.
I mean, some of the I've done my fair share of, you know, odd commercials. I mean, I've done washing machine commercials, and which I always joke about that, but in fact, I learned. I actually worked with some really good people on that. Was a job for Dyson years ago when they were still manufacturing in the UK. And we did adverts for them, and I worked with Andy Daffy over at Framestore, and that was just a joy, you know. And that led to a couple of car commercials and things, and technical things, and you know, and it was that you kind of rode that for a bit. It was really interesting and really fun, but they weren't what I wanted to do. They were just really, oh, that's interesting. But along the way, there have been some, you know, my eyebrows are going up thinking about a few of them. You know, everyone has a drawer of shame, that's for sure. And if you say you haven't, you're lying, because you know, unless you have very, very rich parents and a trust fund, you have to work, and unless you are extremely lucky, you will find yourself having to do something to make rent, you know, and that's it. And you'll be going, what am I doing? The trick, I think, is sometimes to find the fun within that. And there can be. I mean, I did a commercial years ago for a bath sponge, and there was just a really great group of people worked on that. We had such a laugh doing it, and it was just a silly commercial. But I was really fond of the experience. And then I don't even know where that ad is now. I couldn't even lay my hands on it. Somebody's going to dig it up now, for sure.
You have to get something out of it, don't you? Either it's monetary, or camaraderie, or technical, or whatever. It has to be something.
I couldn't have put it better myself. I think the thing is not to become cynical. It's really, really easy to become cynical about the whole process, and you know, to see things as a money machine, or you know, just a necessity. And you've got to try and find the worth in something that you're doing. Otherwise, you might as well do something else. And you know, I've experienced people who, for various reasons, cannot abide working to anyone else's brief. You know, they're brilliant animators, but they only ever do what they want to do. But they have to teach or have a job or something else in order to do that. And or people, like people, you know, I've mentioned who found that actually they just needed to steer into either series or feature animation or something, or games, to find something which would keep them creatively
stimulated in a way.
That's the word.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to figure it out until you get there, and some of us never figure it out.
Well, you know what? But I think isn't that great? I never ever want to feel like I've got it sorted, because I like there's a sort of slight panic, which is really conducive to creativity, and I'm always being. You've also got to be careful not to immerse yourself in too much input. I mean, I admire so many people's work, so many studios' work. Sometimes I just try sometimes I just try and avoid it as well. I mean, Mark, I was talking to Mark the other day, and he's doing a really nice project, which I can't talk about. You know, I've got to say that at least once, haven't I?
There's someone somewhere.
Can't talk about it. No, it's his.
Oh, brilliant!
And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And I hope you will be able to share it with the world at some point. But he was doing something. I'm gonna have to keep this as vague as possible. And I said, "Oh, I've just seen the most amazing reference for that." And I kind of started going on about this book I'd seen, which was full of drawings of this thing, which I thought would be really inspiring to him. And he just said, "I don't want to see it, because if I see it," he said, "I'll be overwhelmed by it." He said, "I'll look at it after." And I was like, wow, you're right. Yeah, you can, if you surround yourself in too much reference, you'll never have, you'll always feel inferior to it in a way, or you'll be too influenced by it. So that really struck a chord with me. I thought, I still went and bought the book, but it's at home, and I'm going to give it to him when he's finished.
It's like, this is what you could have had.
Yes, and look.
Nice.
Yeah, but actually, as you can see, so I did have half a mind that if we didn't have anything to talk about, I would just show you books. But this is my only vice, as they say. I have about 6 times this.
Wow.
Some of it's in the attic. Oh no, I've said that out loud now. Christina will know that it's there. I told her I got rid of it. Hidden in boxes.
We'll have to do a part 2 when we go through them all.
Yeah, I've been thinking about a way to, because I've suddenly realized how transitory all this is. That at some point these have got to go somewhere, and I'd like to do that. I'd like to do something where it's, there are so many wonderful things that people have created here, which so few people have seen, and I'm just always desperate to share them.
Maybe some kind of like online archive.
Yeah, it could be. It could be
Nice.
That'd be another time. So
cool, perfect.
Okay.
So I think we kind of need to finish. It's been almost 2 hours.
Did I win?
You almost.
Yeah. You're always a winner in our eyes.
It's been a big pleasure, man.
It's been really nice.
And thanks so much to share.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to give me someone to talk to.
Yeah.
And
so lonely.
It's really good, and I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure for us.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anyone watching the whole 2 hours of it, but we'll have to edit it to the 10 seconds of the best bit.
They do. It's funny because
quite a few
people
watching it.
watch, there's still quite a few people watching, and the people normally like to listen as a podcast as well. Yeah. It's something me and James been talking, so they can be working and watching.
Whoever is out there who actually stuck it out, it was thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate it, and it's been a huge pleasure. And I look forward to listening into the next one that you do. And it's great that you started this again.
Yeah, we quite missed that.
Yeah.
So guys, just so everyone knows, we kind of back. So the show is going to be every 2 weeks again. So not next Tuesday and the following one. And we should be announcing pretty soon.
Oh, you can't say now?
No, we can't say now.
I'm trying to guess. It's going to be right. Right. Well, we'll do the usual thing. I'm just going to wave and disappear. So I always get this slightly wrong. I've got to get my mouse over the leave.
Never be the last person to leave.
No, that's
Zoom.
it. I'm at it. Thank you both, and take care. And I hope to see you both when you can come and visit us in the studio. It'd be great to see you.
We will.
Great. Awesome, man. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, guys.